Do apologize. The moment I don't know if we can so welcome. So
the YouTube thing. We can see the presentation, but we can't hear anything. Actually,
How about now? Can you hear now?
no.
There could be a
Now-
slight delay.
I could hear it now. I could hear it and see it on.
Now we can hear it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's good.
So I apologize, everybody. Like I said, I appreciate you guys getting on. Apologize for the delays, but technical difficulties. You know, technology is great when it works and it's horrible when it doesn't. So bear with us. So again, I will start again from the top here. So what I want to just start off is say is there's a caveat. The information tonight is the most current information provided by the NMPD and the NMAA. This information is subject to change at any time, any place, anywhere. And I chuckle because that's a true statement. That's a hard situation that we're constantly being put in, and we're having to pivot at a moment's notice. And so it can get a little frustrating, but just know that this is the most current, up-to-date information that is subject to change at any time. So our rationale, why do we want to start pods? Why do we feel like it's necessary for pods to get started? So the Cobury Athletic and Activities Department believes that school-based athletics and activities are an integral part of student mental, physical, and educational growth. What are pods? So when we start talking about pods, you've probably heard it referred to many times. So it's a group. So we're putting people in groups, and right now the ratio is 4-to-1. That means 4 students or 4 athletes to 1 coach. Coaches can have no more than 2 pods assigned to them at this time. That's really important because of contact tracing and the things that come behind if there is a student that does happen to have COVID. So let me backtrack a little bit. Okay. We are trying to provide an opportunity for our students to come back and participate and be a part of socially with other students, and also for our coaches to be able to reach them and do what they do best and mentor them and inspire them. But that being said, there is always going to be a risk. We cannot guarantee that there's 100% risk-free situation, because it can't be. But what we can say is that we will do everything in our power to make sure that we mitigate as much as possible. So what do we mean by mitigation? What will we do? And of course, this goes into much more detail. We have much more detailed plans, and I can answer any more questions based on this, but this is just an overview of the things that we would do. So all the coaches would be required to test on a bi-weekly basis. And that just kind of helps us understand, we're all staying safe and identify whether or not there is a COVID case, on a much more regular basis. All coaches, sponsors, and athletes must wear masks at all times. It used to be that we could take masks, or the students could remove the mask while they were exercising. That has changed, and whenever they are here doing or participating in pods, they would have to wear masks, our coaches and students, 100% of the time. All coaches and sponsors must wear a mask. I read that. All equipment used will be sanitized before and after. So there again, that's another change. This is kind of an older change, but it is a change. It started off that no equipment could be used, and now we can use equipment within pods. It is deemed to be safe. It has to stay within that pod, and it has to be sanitized before and after use. And of course, when every student walks in, they will have daily temperature checks, and then we will ask them a series of questions. Are you feeling feverish? Do you have a cough? have you been out of state? And those types of questions before they are able to participate in pod. I'm going to stop right there, and if there's any questions, I would like to address them before we go any further. Do we have any questions, Mr. Burnett? Or okay, well, we'll be moving forward. Coaches, please feel free if you see that there's a question that we don't catch, feel free to interrupt me and let me know so we can get that question answered. So facilities. So now that we are in a better situation, we have our air purifiers in place, we have foggers, we have our DC7, which is what we would use to clean our hard surfaces. We are able to expand the number of facilities that we've used in the past. When we first started, we were strictly outdoors. We were using, just the football field, the softball field, and the baseball field. Now we're in a better place, and we have more mitigation systems in place. We're able to come indoors using the main gym, the wrestling room, the small gym, and possibly the weight rooms as well. Bathrooms is one of those things that we do have, but is one of those things that we want to limit the use of. So, we do ask, and then you'll see it later on in our do's and don'ts for students. But we do ask that, bathrooms are only used in emergency situations, because we want to make sure that we are able to get in there and sanitize after somebody uses the restroom before anybody else does. So just to limit the amount of sanitation that we would need, we would like to have those the bathrooms used only on emergency situations. And then we have entering and exit strategies, right? So when we schedule our pods, what we're doing is we are trying to make sure that we're using multiple entrances and exits. We're trying to stagger the time that students come in or arrive. That way we prevent them from clustering or grouping. So that's just a little bit of a strategy to help, like I said, mitigate the COVID exposure or any type of mass gatherings that are not supposed to be happening. So that's to ensure that that doesn't happen. So students' do's and don'ts. Well, just the do's at this moment. So students' do's: wear a mask 100% of the time. Bring your own bag with a water bottle, right? Be dropped off and picked up on time. And that's due to our strategic exit and entering plans. Come prepared to train. What does that mean? That means you got to come to practice fully prepared to start practicing. We are not using the locker rooms at the moment, although the NMA has opened those up, but we have not yet come up with a safe plan, or a plan that I feel or we feel is appropriate to move forward with using the locker rooms at this time. So we want to say that you need to come, or students do need to come ready. That means they come in their sweats or and have their shoes. They probably have their shoes in their bag and switch out shoes once they come into the gym. But there will not be any use of the locker rooms for changing, just again for sanitation purposes. We do ask that you use the restroom before you attend, eat before you attend. We really want to limit the amount of times that our mask is being removed. Obviously, we don't want to share that food as well. So if you have your own water bottle, yes, you can drink out of your own water bottle, but we prefer and we encourage you to eat prior to coming to a pod practice. If you're going out of town, inform your pod leader of going outside of state. Now, this has the reason we had this in place, and I didn't remove it, even though that rule has actually changed a little bit. the 14-day quarantine for traveling out of state has been lifted, but it is recommended that if you still do that, that you quarantine for 14 days. And possibly even have a positive test. I mean, a test come out, go test yourself and have a negative test, I should say. We don't have to do that, but we will encourage people not to go out of state, not to travel while they're participating in pods, to try to mitigate any type of COVID-related incidents. We also suggest that after practice, you go home and wash your clothes immediately after arriving. Once you get there, wash your clothes. So don'ts, student don'ts. Students, don't take off your mask at any time. Hang out before or after practice. Come feeling ill. Share water bottles, bring food, or share clothing or mints. So I'm going to take a pause and see if there are any questions at the moment.
Okay. The first question is, are gators okay to use in the lane?
At this time, net gaiters have not been approved to be used. So we recommend that you do use either a cloth mask or a KN95 mask. It is also recommended by the CDC to wear 2 masks, but gaiters will not be appropriate to use.
Okay, there's also another one, I'm not exactly sure specifically what they're asking, but is this applicable for all grade levels?
So pods is only going to be applicable for high school. Okay, this is only high school. If for some reason our state is in a better position further on down the road, then we can consider opening up. The other thing is manpower. So as we've gone in the past, when we first started opening up pods or reopening pods, we were looking at about having 40 pods. And that does require a lot more coaches. And we don't necessarily have the manpower to expand that any further. You know, we will do our best if we have more than that to try to accommodate all students. And of course, we will accommodate all students. If, you know, we won't leave any student that wants to participate out, obviously. But it is a challenge. Yeah, the 4-to-1 ratio, that one has changed. You know, it used to be 9-to-1, which was a little more doable. It was a lot easier to create those pods. But now that it's a 4-to-1, then that just created double the amount of pods that we had in the past.
Okay, next question for adding to that same question, do 8th graders who could play varsity qualify?
At the moment, no. At the moment, we are not including 8th graders to participate in high school sports. Okay, so we do have some failure to adhere. So we want to be really strict. Okay, we do have another question. I will answer that before we move on. Yes. The short answer to that is no. The state and the NMA have said that if you travel out of state and you come back, you do not have to quarantine. So that's the short answer. Now, will COBRE be requiring them to quarantine? No. We're not going to go against the orders of the state or the NMA, but we will encourage them not to, if at all possible, at any time, because we do know that does increase the risk of COVID or COVID transmission. So we will encourage not to. We understand, you know, people have to do things out of state. We understand that those are going to be things that happen, but we will encourage you to stick around so that you can and so we can mitigate the transmission rates. All right, so failure to adhere. So if a student doesn't follow these directions, then we do have to make sure that we keep everybody safe. And I hate always to finish on a note like this or to even bring it up, but it is a reality. And we may have students that may not want to have a mask on 100% of the time. Or, you know, we may have to say, sorry, you can't waterfall his water bottle. So we will have consequences, you know, for students not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And this is it. The first time is a warning. The second time is a 1-day dismissal from practice. And then the third time would be a 30-day dismissal. So some important things before we can have you come on or have students come on to participate in our pods. We have a liability of release of liability form. And what that does is that it basically explains that there is a risk of, you know, that you're taking on a risk and that ultimately it is your decision and that COBRA cannot be held liable if for some reason a student comes down with COVID. Like I said before, we're never going to 100% eliminate the risk, but we will do the best that we can to mitigate it as much as possible. And then the other one is participation examination waiver / physical. So the NMAA has given us permission to use this participation examination waiver in lieu of getting an entire physical. Now, the only time a student may need a physical is if they broke a bone between the last time they had a physical, or if at any point between they've contracted COVID. So if a student has contracted COVID, they would have to go and get a physical so they can have a release from a doctor saying that they are okay to participate. One other thing to mention is, you know, pictures say 1,000 words. So there are a couple online videos that the coaches have put together that to kind of show what we're doing and how it looks. You can find those on the COBRA website, and they're also listed on YouTube. I don't have a whole lot more. I wanted this more to be give you guys a chance to ask questions. The second part of this will be on the schedule, but I want to be able to answer more questions based on the first part of the presentation. All right, I don't think there's further questions. I know there's more questions that we're probably going to have based on competition schedules and where we're at with that situation. So I'm going to stop sharing. If I know how to stop sharing here, stop presenting here. Okay, so I will be talking about competition and where we're at with competition and what that looks like and the schedule for competition. So the NMA, and this is, anybody can go on the NMAC, I forget what the website is because I have it bookmarked, but NMACT, nmact.org, and all of this information, guideline for participation, the calendars, all of that you can find on those pages. We'll also try to post them ourselves, and then see if we can get them posted on our COBRA website, at least the calendar. That being said, there's also a caveat before we get started on the calendars. There's a lot of things that have to be in place, that have to happen in order for participation in any sports to happen. Okay. One of those things that needs to happen prior to us being in competition is that schools, specifically the high school, have to be in a hybrid model. And it's New Mexico PED, Public Education Department, has to approve that model. Before the approval of your hybrid model, there has to be a fire marshal that comes to your school, to our district, I would say, and they would have to go through every school to make sure that every school is meeting the guidelines prior to opening. So those are things that have to happen in order for us to be able to compete. And I'm gonna stop there because we may have questions.
Is our fall sports building?
Fall sports are, at this moment, not, they're being considered, but there's a strong possibility that it will not happen. Now, there's, like I said, there's a lot of things that have to come along with that. So guidelines came out based on participation, what you had to do to participate. So I did mention the first couple of things that had to be in place to do that. The second thing that has to be in place is that once we are in the hybrid model, there has to be a 2-week period before we are able to compete. Within that 2-week period, there also has to be a 2-week period of pods on top of that. That changed. That's a new rule as of yesterday. Okay, like I told you, there's the caveat to start off with. Everything changes, and it changes instantly and constantly. Okay, so we do know that the timeline now changes. Now the start date also has changed. The start date used to be February 22nd. Now the start date for fall sports is March 1st. Okay. So within those guidelines and within those restrictions that the state has set upon us, what would happen is that our initial start date, which the board has approved of, was March 8th. So if we continued with the March 8th start date and we followed the guidelines that we had to do, because our seasons are shrunken as much as they have, we would find ourselves way out of season. We would be out of season already. So there would not be a possible season. Now there is a consideration of starting March 1st, being able to start on March 1st. Now, what that does is it puts us in a position where if we do play football, we would play 1 game because of what the restrictions are at this moment. If we did play volleyball, that would give us 3 games. Now, these are strong considerations because ultimately we want to make sure that that our kids are safe, that we're providing a safe environment, not just mitigating COVID, but being in a position to allow our students to be safe in competition as well. So in this whole thing, we have to consider spring break being in the middle of there. We don't know and we can't prevent people from traveling out of state, but one COVID case or one situation would shut the whole thing down. And that one game that we might have planned for, or that we might have been able to play, no longer exists. We don't have it anymore. And then there's further implications for winter sports and spring sports practices as well. So those are a lot of things that we have to consider, and there is a very strong possibility that we will not move forward with fall sports. There is not a limitation on the amount of sports that students can sign up for. And in fact, we want to encourage them to do so, but we want to do that within reason, right? We know that there would be a strong, really hard. Sometimes the students would have to make hard choices as to which sport they would want to compete in, or which, because of the way things are scheduled, and they're scheduled right on top of each other, and things are happening at the same time. Students would have to choose which team they would have to let down. And and as coaches, we're not going to punish our kids for that, because we want to provide this year. What we're talking about is providing opportunities. So if our kids can have these opportunities and we can make it work, then yeah, we want them to sign up for sports. Being realistic, right? If there's 4 sports happening, I mean, obviously we can't have them doing 4 sports in the same season. But we do understand that sports are going to overlap. And we do have to give each other grace. And we have a great staff here that is willing to work with each other and willing to work with the students to try to make that happen, to allow them to have that happen. But that has to be within reason. If we can come up with a way of allowing your child to do so, then we're not going to prevent it. But like I said, it has to be within reason.
The next question is, are pods going to be sports?
They can be, and we will start looking at more sports-specific pods. And I think we were looking at that as the time that we started, that we had, that we were able to go for a few days, and then we had to stop when the state shut us down. We were looking at that because we can use specific equipment. We can do sports-specific practices. So we can't. So what I'm saying is that we can't use a football. We can use, say, for wrestling, we could probably use their wrestling dummies that they use. But of course, all of that has to be sanitized between pods, whoever's using it. So yes, we can talk about sports specific, but we also understand that we share so many athletes that it's not necessarily only going to be sports specific. Coaches understand that they will do things that are going to help the overall athlete, not just I'm going to practice batting the whole time. We're going to work on things like footwork and strength and plyometrics, things that would benefit all sports. But the short answer is yes, we can be sports specific. Any other questions? So I'm just going to go over this calendar of events and how they're going to play out. So this calendar that I have is obviously outdated because they've changed it again. So with the new start date would be March 1st for athletics, for athletic competition. So if the school has met our requirements by March 1st, they would be able to compete in cross-country, football, and volleyball. They would be able to start their full-on practices on March 1st if they've met all the criteria prior. Their first meets or their first games would start on that weekend. So the fall schedule would look like it would start on March 1st and would end on April 3rd. So it's obviously a condensed season. So it would start on March 1st and April 3rd. That being said, when we start looking at when winter sports start, I did talk about the being condensed and being overlapped. So winter sports this year would only be considered basketball, boys and girls basketball. And let me double check, but I'm thinking that could also be cheer competition. Correct me if I'm wrong, Coach Olguin. Are we looking at winter sports including cheer comp?
Well, did you just say that it's changed?
No, that hasn't changed. Just the fall sports has. The fall sports start date has. But we're looking at, yeah, it looks like here that it would be spirit comps. Also would be considered a winter sport. So the start of winter sports would actually be the week of March 22nd. So your winter sports season starts March 22nd, and it would go through, double check here. And it would go through April 30th. So again, we're looking at about another month of winter sports. Within that month, or within that start of winter sports, we're also looking at the start of spring practices and spring sports. So the first day of spring practices, let's see here, would be April 5th. And spring sports are considered to be golf, wrestling, baseball, softball, and track. Those would be considered your spring sports. And spring sports, because they have not had a full season in a year, aside from wrestling, they're looking at making sure that spring seasons can have a full season and not a shortened season. Therefore, the spring season would go all the way through June, with possible state tournaments on June 26th, the 19th, and the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th. We'd be looking at state championships or state competitions. Now, like I said, these are all things that are subject to change. Now, I want to put something else out there as well. There are travel restrictions. There are things that we cannot do based on what is going on. So what we are trying to do this year is, like I said before, is provide as many opportunities for our kids to be able to compete and do and participate in sports and activities, right? So because we have so many restrictions on travel and within your region, and the things that we can and cannot do, no overnight trips, those types of things, what we usually do is try to schedule teams to be competitive, or to put us in a certain ranking, right? We want to be put on Max Prep's ranking for seeding, and all that is important. And I know it's important, and I know. So when we can do that within the limits, we will. But there needs to be an understanding that there may not be those possibilities of playing, of strength of schedule, or of being able to go play, a powerhouse school like up north somewhere. That may not be a possibility. Although those are beneficial for us in seeding and ranking, those may not be possibilities. So what we need to focus on is being able to give our students as many opportunities as we can within the regulations that are and constraints that are given to us. I'm going to stop there. Is there any questions? Wrestling is a spring sport this year.
Nelson?
Hold on a second. There's a question here. Go ahead, Coach Helene.
At what point are we going to start considering our 8th graders to come up to the high school?
That's a good question. I think what we have to look at is the amount of participation that we would have here already. We'd also have to consider that if we are in a hybrid situation, that creates a situation where we're exposing more kids from the middle school up to the high school. So what that causes is risk of shutting down entirely. So we have to consider those risks. We have to make sure that that is not something that can ruin it, what we have, because like I said, more people, more exposure. They're at different places, and they're coming from another place and bringing it within a pod or a practice or something, which in turn can shut that program down. So we want to eliminate the amount of exposure to other places and other people. So if that means that this year we may not be able to bring up 8th graders, that may happen. There's also the possibility that because of our travel situation and busing and being able to separate people, the possibility of only working with varsity sports is a strong possibility. Now, that's not set in stone, but it could be that that's the only thing that we're able to do, based on the numbers of participation. So that is a consideration. That's not off the table. I mean, like I said, I would rather be able to give all kids as much as opportunities as possible, but we know that for sure that our seniors are the ones missing out and losing out the most at this time, right? So most of our seniors would be varsity players. So if we can provide that opportunity for at least our seniors, then I think that's a positive. If we can provide these opportunities for more students, that becomes a positive. As the state begins to open, we will adjust to what we need to do in order to provide that opportunity for students.
Will we compete with? Will there be tournaments or rules only?
The question about wrestling is, I don't know if you're able to hear it. Did everybody hear that question? Go ahead and repeat it to me and I will repeat it. If there is a wrestling season, how will it look? Who will we compete with?
Will there be tournaments or rules?
And will there be tournaments and duels only? So I can tell you that the wrestling season has been condensed into the amount of points available. And correct me if I'm wrong, Coach Minus, but I think that number is 12.
18.
Did it go up to 18?
It shrunk down to 18.
So
At
it
this
lost.
time, go
Okay,
ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got an email from Scott yesterday. We're down to 18 points, as well as it's a dual format at this time, and they are considering a one-day tournament of 8 teams. They do
And
want
like
us
you
to
said-
wrestle. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And yeah, we'll take advantage of the regional area, but we do have people from the north that have wanted to come down to wrestle us.
Right.
So that would be helpful for us.
Yes. So, we've been told over and over to slow down and, we will do one season at a time. And so, like I've said at the beginning of this meeting, everything is subject to changes. So as of right now, can we travel? Can we do those things? No, we can't. So we can't say for sure who we're going to wrestle. As of right now, with the new information, so they're looking at an 8-team tournament. I think it's for seeding. Is that for state seeding?
18 points.
18 points?
Yeah, you have to have 18 points, and then you'll start the district
And the district
tournament.
is being, okay.
Yeah,
So what
it's
I
still
think
open.
the hope is, that by that point, that the state is opened and we can do much greater mass gatherings. So like I said, there's a lot of things that would have to be in place. So the short answer would be that we don't have an exact, there's nothing concrete. We don't have an answer to that, not yet. Nothing is concrete. I will definitely, if and when we start competitions, we will have more updates on schedules, and we will put out an actual schedule, where we have teams that will be playing, but I just want to remind everybody that, we want to try to keep this as safe as possible. So there may be some sacrifices that we may be asking. We may be asking, hey guys, maybe don't travel during the season because one case shuts us down for 14 days, and as you can see, our seasons are pretty much a month. So there's a lot of things that we want you to still be careful with. We want everybody to stay safe. We want everybody to be cognizant of what you do in and out of school, in and out of pods, where you go, how you're, how you're conducting yourself, all those things we have to still take into strong consideration, and we will be strict on the things that we do because we have to make sure that we keep everybody safe. And I see Mr. Gearhart has a question.
Mr. Diaz, if you could I think you kind of answered this, but just for everybody that's tuning in, the NMA guidelines talk about not traveling, no overnights, no tournaments, etc. And yet the schedules are talking about tournaments. Is that all subject due to how things change down the road, or how does that work? Are state tournaments the only tournaments that are allowed?
So when talking about a state tournament, I don't know, because that's still in consideration whether or not we will have state tournaments. And then the NMA can say that we will have state tournaments if they can plan for it. But if mass gatherings have not changed, then there's no way to have those, right? So they're at this time, the NMA is considering not even competing for the Blue Trophy. And like I said, they're echoing what I've said, is that we're providing opportunities. So if we can provide more opportunities and not worry about the Blue Trophy, then that's maybe the direction that they will go. I can't say. But the big question is the question of equity, about how, some schools have started already and some schools have not. And when we compete with each other, would that be fair? And how are you gonna, and how's that gonna determine, is that really gonna determine a state tournament or a state champion? Because nothing has been fair. So those are still questions that are being asked. As far as, okay, I see Mr. Burnett does have his hand up, but let me finish this question. So as far as tournaments, yes, they are possibilities, but everything is subject to change, right? So if we're in a better situation, so what my assumption is, and I can say this is an assumption because I don't have facts for this, is that when we are looking at tournaments for the spring is because they anticipate that the state will be in a better position. Now, like everything we know, it is all subject to change. Anytime, anywhere, any place. So Mr. Burnett has a question from the people. Currently, let's see here. I don't even know that it is currently, there's a plan for it, but there might be a scheduled date. So that scheduled date, it's not even on this schedule. I don't have it on the schedule, and maybe Mr. Minus might have some more insight on that part.
I don't even know what the question is.
The question is, when is state scheduled for wrestling? Did they give you a date?
Yeah, tentatively it'd be the May 20. It looks like May 20. It's May 22nd, 28th, and 29th.
Yes, 27, 28, 29. It's right here.
Mhm.
District tournaments
Right
will be
now.
the week before. Thank you for that, Coach Minus.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. I know there's probably a lot more information that, you might come up with a question later. Feel free to email me. I don't know if this is possible, Mr. Burnett, but can we put that on the chat here? So I will have Mr. Burnett put my email on that chat. If you have any questions or anything that that you might think of later, I will be happy to answer any questions that I can. and I will try to be as transparent as possible. So I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate everybody coming. And then I'm gonna open it up even to a coach. Maybe, do you guys have a question or a comment or something that you're wondering about?
Nelson,
Yes,
I just have
Coach,
one more.
Yes.
I have a lot of girls texting me right now and wondering why we're starting pods next week if our start date for the season isn't until till March. And so I think clarifying that for the public that we're allowed to start in pods right now
Yes.
as soon as next week is important.
Yes, we are. Like I said from the beginning in our rationale that we feel that this is for the mental, physical, and educational growth of students. So we want to be able to give those opportunities and provide that. So yes, we're not doing opening pods solely based on when we're going to be able to compete. We want to give students an opportunity to have an outlet, to possibly see their friends in a social situation, to be in contact with a mentor. We all know that at this point in the life of our teenagers, the social part of this is just as important. So we want to be able to provide those opportunities. This isn't solely based on whether or not we can compete, but it is definitely giving them an opportunity to have a sense of some sort of normalcy moving forward. I see Coach Benfield. I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, Mr. Diaz, my question is, have anybody talked to the officials yet? And what level are they involved with decisions going on right now? And the other,
So
go ahead.
oh, you have two-part question. Sure.
I got two questions, so go ahead and answer that one.
So the NMA has suggested that we do at this moment have enough officials to be able to run at least varsity and high school sports. And that is another strong consideration as to why middle school sports is not being considered at the moment. We may not have enough to go around. We may not be able to schedule those with the shortened schedules. So short answer again, I ramble a lot, but short answer is yes, they would be able to handle it at the moment.
Okay, the second question is, there have been talk that the governor is not really interested in indoor activities. She's more open to outside activities. Does that play into our decisions as well?
I think it does. I mean, obviously for competition, it does. You can't play basketball if you're not indoors, right? So when we're talking about indoor competitions, yeah, it does make a difference. Ultimately, the governor is going to make all these decisions. As of right now, the governor hasn't even said that we could compete as a state, right? There is a big controversy as to why NMSU and UNM can't play it at home, right? And then they're saying, well, then how is that possible for high school people? How is that possible for high school athletics and activities? If the colleges can't do it? And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have the answers to those questions, right? So we are going to move. The only thing we can do is move forward with the information that we have and we're given. If they come out and say, and the state comes out and says, we're not doing any of this, then we stop. But at the moment, we are given these opportunities and we are allowed to do certain things, but we're going to keep moving forward and trying to provide those opportunities the best way we can. Did I answer your question, Chuck? Mr. Benfield?
Yes, sir, it did. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? I know that there might be some music parents on there, and I can tell you that this NMA is working to try to get our music kids back, and we want them back, and they deserve to be back as well. So just know that that is not forgotten, and that we will continue to support Mr. Gearhart and his efforts, and then whatever we can do to get band students going is what we will do. Are there any other questions online? Well, thank you everybody for your time. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at ndiaz@cobre.k12